Budanov knows his job. Over the past day, GUR fighters in Pokrovsk managed to improve the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. The clearing operation continues. World War III is off the table. Trump announced an eternal peace with China. NATO is preparing for war with Russia. The scenario is laid out in more than 4,000 pages. New Patriots for Ukraine. 2 additional systems from Germany will arrive in the coming days. Moscow spent the whole night fending off drones, and several regions experienced blackouts again. In the US, Halloween celebrations turned into mass riots involving minors. Hello, my name is Volodymyr Karaban. Watch the latest news that matters to Ukraine and the world right now. World War III is cancelled. The US has reached an agreement with China and is moving toward everlasting peace. Such a statement was made the day before by US President Donald Trump following his meeting with Xi Jinping. My meeting with President Xi of China was wonderful for both our countries. This meeting will lead to everlasting peace and success. May God bless China and the USA, Trump wrote. At the same time, he did not explain exactly what he meant or what specific peace agreements he is hoping for. Let me remind you, the leaders of the US and China held bilateral talks in the South Korean city of Busan on the night of October 29th to 30th, which lasted more than an hour and a half. This was their first face-to-face meeting during Trump's second presidential term. At the same time, fighting against less powerful opponents, Trump, it seems, is ready. He has sent a 16,000-strong group of American troops along with an entire fleet of ships and aircraft, reports the Washington Post. According to the publication, the forces include 8 surface combat ships, a nuclear submarine, and aircraft including a B-52 strategic bomber and F-35 fighter jets. In addition, the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford was sent to the Caribbean along with 5 escort ships. Such a buildup of U.S. military presence in the Caribbean indicates that the Trump administration is preparing to expand operations in the region, analysts write. At the same time, they are also preparing in Venezuela. For example, recently Nicolas Maduro appealed for military assistance, particularly to Russia, and it seems he received something of the sort from Putin. A Russian Il-76 transport plane previously used by Wagner fighters landed in Caracas. What exactly was on board is currently unknown. Analysts note that this flight lasted more than 2 days, which allowed it to bypass the airspace of Western countries and also avoid cargo inspections in countries unfriendly to Russia. And while Putin is trying above all to preserve at least some, while things are surfacing outside Russian territory, who knows what's happening inside Russia itself. And this night was no exception. Once again, there were flights, explosions, and fires across the border. In Krasnodar Krai, drones struck an oil refinery in the city of Tuapse. According to preliminary information, the pier of the oil terminal was hit there. A fire broke out at the site of the strike. The deep-water pier of Rosneft was also hit. This is a maritime port facility specifically built for loading oil products onto tankers. A fire has also been reported there. Things are also tense in the Kursk region. In the city of Zheleznogorsk, drones targeted the local electrical substation. As a result, part of the city was left without power. The occupied territories were also affected. In Volchevsk, Luhansk region, an electrical substation was also attacked. As a result, a blackout is still ongoing in part of the region. And it seems that life without electricity is just beginning for the Russians. Magyar has announced new long-range strikes on Russia's energy sector. The head of the drone systems forces wrote about this on his Facebook page. A blackout is not that scary. Ukraine's defense forces promise you a rapid, albeit somewhat forced adaptation, the Post says. At the same time, it seems that strikes on the enemy's oil industry will also continue. Gas and oil burn up very quickly, Magyar concluded. Let me remind you, the day before, Ukrainian drones set parts of the Moscow region and several other regions of Russia on fire. Problems with electricity supply in those areas are still being reported to this day. Our soldiers are also achieving successes on the front line. Thus, the 7th Corps of the Air Assault Forces stated that the defense forces have improved their positions in Pokrovsk, and at the moment they are increasing the number of their assault groups in the city. As a result of successful counteractions, Ukrainian troops managed to improve their tactical position in several city blocks, the military noted. At the same time, the situation in Pokrovsk remains difficult and dynamic. It is also reported that the number of assault units in Pokrovsk is increasing. Fighters are being brought into the city via proven routes. This, in particular, helps to effectively destroy enemy logistics. Let me remind you, yesterday it became known that the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine is conducting a daring counter-operation in Pokrovsk. The intelligence officers were airlifted into the settlement by helicopters. Also arriving with them was the head of the agency, Kirilo Budanov, who is leading the operation to destroy the enemy. Yet despite this, statements from Moscow still claim that Pokrovsk is encircled. And in an attempt to somehow improve their positions, Russia is resorting to truly unbelievable human wave assaults. At the same time, they are sending everyone indiscriminately into the meat grinder. More about the chaos happening in the occupiers' army in our next report.
The wounded and maimed are sent into assaults, and those deemed undesirable among the soldiers are simply eliminated. And if someone doesn't want to sign a contract, they'll end up signing it anyway. But the newly minted soldier only finds out about this after the fact. It's also practically impossible to leave the army. Even single parents, who by law should be released without issue, are denied discharge. Their children are simply placed in orphanages during this time.
According to single parents interviewed by others, commanders may at first simply ignore the report, refusing to grant discharge, verbally. If the documents are accepted after all, they can be lost. And the soldiers continue to serve while their children temporarily live with relatives or are placed in orphanages.
So it turns out that with a living father, the children are orphans. But really, what can we say about discharging a healthy man when in the Russian army they don't even discharge severely wounded soldiers? Why would they? Healthy but missing a leg. Oh, that's just a leg. Well, kid, it's the sky, but it's just a leg. He's been sitting here for days too. What was I trying to say with this? They came in, looked around, asked who was there for what, and were told the reasons. All right, guys, got it. And off they went. These occupiers will soon set out on their final meat assault. The fact that some of them are missing limbs doesn't interest anyone. Their commanders simply use them as disposable cannon fodder. Some occupiers still believe the state will help them, so they complain to the Kremlin's ombudsman about being denied medical care or receiving poor treatment. The number of such complaints has quadrupled in 2 years, from 459 to 1,976.
A man, whose wife filed the complaint, was sent to a frontline hospital for treatment and then referred to a military medical commission to determine his fitness for service. After transferring to the military unit to receive an order for the medical commission, he was sent to the front line instead. Since May 2024, he has been considered missing in action. After injuries or pre-existing health problems, not all soldiers are given enough time for full and proper rehabilitation. It happens that a soldier is sent to the front line despite doctors' recommendations to continue treatment and the need for rehabilitation. As a result, there are soldiers on the front line who are physically unable to carry out combat missions.
But at least these ones went to the front on their own. And there are cases when Russian men only find out after the fact that their occupation has changed.
Black recruiters, they've turned to human traffickers. We basically have human trafficking currently taking place to supply people to the front.
Everyone, without exception, ends up in the crossfire. Cerebral palsy, mental illnesses, missing limbs, all of that is considered trivial. The Russian army will find a use for them. The local administrations, of course, know all about it. They even encourage and assist it.
In my home village of Kenicherkasy, they got a guy from Siberia drunk. They married him off to a woman, an older woman of loose morals and low social responsibility. They sent him to the front, where he was killed, and now they're claiming compensation as his wife, even though he never even saw her in his life.
His commanders can help with the elimination of such a Russian soldier. The occupiers complain that unwanted Svochnik soldiers are often sent on suicidal assaults. One of these roles during an assault in the military is called a beacon. The occupier is sent without a weapon or body armor to expose the firing positions of Ukrainian troops.
You just run. It's a one-way trip with a blocking detachment standing behind you. They don't let you go back. Your only chance to survive is to get wounded and be taken out.
The occupiers admit not only to commanders eliminating their own kind, but also to the killing of civilians. A Russian soldier recounted how his commander entered the wrong coordinates, resulting in an artillery strike on a village. Many people died, including children. He only found out what had happened after the administration of the so-called LNR complained to the command.
We basically mixed up the target, with the grad system, with the Uragan system. They were assigned to the same grid squares. And the girl who was on duty at the council, she just mixed them up, the captain. And what about me? They just give me the numbers to call the battalion commander. So how do you feel? I'm fine. 12 children and 9 women.
Of course, the incident was hushed up, and on Russian television they reported that supposedly Ukrainian servicemen were in that village. And these are just the stories that have come to light in the last few days. In reality, the situation is much worse. And with each passing day, it keeps getting worse.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
They will arrive in the coming days. Next week, Ukraine will receive 2 additional Patriot air defense systems. Germany is finalizing the transfer procedure. The delivery of 2 MIM-104 Patriot launchers from Bundeswehr stockpiles to Ukraine, announced at the beginning of August 2025 and largely funded by Denmark, Lithuania, and Norway, is expected to be completed in the coming days, according to the German Aid to Ukraine project page. Let me remind you, in the summer, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre agreed to transfer 2 complete Patriot systems to Ukraine. Patriot? Previously, they were on active duty with the Bundeswehr. In turn, NATO also does not forget about the threat from the Kremlin. The alliance has developed a plan against possible Russian attacks, spanning almost 4,500 pages, according to the German publication Die Welt. The document is titled "The Concept of the Deterrence Line on the Eastern Flank." It was developed with the participation of all 32 NATO members under the leadership of the Supreme Command of the Alliance's land forces. In particular, it concerns strengthening combat units, redeploying heavy equipment, and using drones and autonomous systems. Another key topic is improved coordination and information sharing among the allies. Meanwhile, one of the retired NATO generals told the publication that the Russian regime is already in the so-called phase 0. In other words, fully prepared for a clash with NATO. But the countries closest to Russia seem to be left out. One of the member countries on the eastern flank is Finland, and there they've already moved from documents to concrete actions. The government is calling up reservists and preparing to conduct the largest exercises, where they will be seriously preparing to defend themselves.
Acting proactively, Finland is deploying 15,000 troops to the border with Russia. The Finns are preparing for the largest series of military exercises this year. Conscripts, reservists, professional soldiers, as well as units from allied countries Sweden and the United Kingdom will take part in them. As reported by the country's ground forces, the purpose of the maneuvers is to test the army's readiness to defend the state and to strengthen cooperation with NATO allies. This is
an appropriate response by the NATO bloc to the aggressive actions of the occupying country. On the territory of the occupying country, in close proximity to Finland's borders, there is currently intensive engineering construction of new military bases. These are the armed forces of the occupying country. We're talking about, and in Petrozavodsk, Kandalaksha, and other settlements on the territory of the Russian Federation, which indicate the redeployment of units of the Russian army directly near the borders of Finland.
One of the largest episodes will be the Lively Sentry exercise, which will take place in southern Finland from November 27th to December 4th. Almost 7,000 participants will be involved in it.
Russia has constantly made it clear to Finland that a threat is looming. Moreover, there was a constant element of military political pressure on Finland with the aim, accordingly, of maintaining its so-called neutral status. So to say that after the occupation of Finnish territories, good neighborly relations were established has absolutely no basis. Russian military presence near Finland was steadily and constantly increasing over time.
In the spring of 2023, Finland became a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. This provoked a sharp reaction from Russia, worsening bilateral relations. In addition, Finland imposed sanctions against Russia and refused to grant asylum to Russians fleeing mobilization. After that, Putin's lackeys began blaming the Finns for every sin at every opportunity. For example, in September, former alcoholic President Dmitry Medvedev decided that Finland was preparing to attack Russia.
After joining NATO under the guise of defensive measures, Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia, apparently setting up a springboard for an attack on us.
Moreover, according to him, Russia allegedly, by law, deserves reparations from Finland for World War II. Supposedly back then they paid too little thanks to the goodwill.
This development is specifically attributed to the actions and influence of the Russians, whose involvement has been a defining factor in shaping the course and outcome of these events.
Following the alcoholic Medvedev, the head of the State Duma Defense Committee, Andrei Kartapolov, made aggressive statements. He declared, or rather threatened, that Russia is ready to defend itself at any moment. They have everything they need for that. Medvedev had previously spoken about this as well.
We cannot overlook or ignore the fact that Finland is currently a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. This clearly implies and necessitates changes in our military approaches to securing the border and responding to possible unfriendly acts.
The political and military leaders of Finland are doing everything they can to emphasize that an attack by Russia would be an act of suicidal.
This is also evidenced by the formation of new military units in the Leningrad military district and, accordingly, the deployment of military infrastructure directly near the borders of Finland.
It was previously reported that Finland had offered NATO to establish a new military base on its territory, Helsinki, which could become a base for large NATO reconnaissance drones. Regime change due to American sanctions. Washington's restrictions against Russia's Lukoil could lead to a fall of power in Bulgaria and spark protests by pro-Russian forces. This was reported by Politico. The publication writes that there is a large oil refinery in Burgas, Bulgaria, which belongs to Lukoil and supplies 80% of the country's fuel needs, having a significant economic impact on the state. Therefore, according to agency sources, the Bulgarian authorities are negotiating with the White House to postpone the start of the measures, the sanctions, so that the refinery's operations are not halted. Analysts and politicians believe that Lukoil's withdrawal from Bulgaria threatens a large-scale fuel shortage, which in turn could spark public protests and accelerate the government's collapse. And finally, holiday protests in the USA, or how not to celebrate the Day of the Dead. In Washington, Halloween celebrations turned into mass riots. The reason was a crowd of young people who violated the curfew. This rule was introduced by the Trump administration for minors in order to reduce crime on the streets. But not everyone was happy with such rules on the holiday. Far from it. As a result, the police and National Guard had to disperse underage vampires, skeletons, and ghosts with batons. With that, I say goodbye to you. More news will be in the 4 p.m. broadcast. In the meantime, be sure to leave your comments under this video and don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel to learn even more.